Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. And we have a brand new sponsor of the podcast for the rest of the year and next year, and that is Calavista Software. They specialize in software development without the drama. Since 2001, Calavista Software has been trusted by startups and Fortune 100 companies alike for their custom software needs, and we are super grateful for the support of ATC that Calavista Software has provided. Anyway, if you're a regular listener of this podcast, you know that every week we try to bring interesting people here in the community to just have a conversation about who they are, what they're doing, and what we think the future of Austin is going to look like. And rarely have we had a repeat guest. But we've been doing this podcast now for 2.5 years. It's over 122 episodes and going strong. And we are returning to guest number 6. Actually, it's guest number 5 because the first one, I don't think we had a guest. We just talked about the idea of what we were doing. But from December 20th, 2022, we had this guest on. So if you want to know more about the guest, go back and listen to episode 6 because we have a lot about his past life, where he came from, how he got going. Today, we're going to talk more about where he is now and what's happening with his new ventures. And that is Brett Hurt. Brett, welcome to Austin Tech Connect.
Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate all you do. And thanks for leading so well in Austin.
Well, I probably should say welcome back to Austin Tech Connect, but for those of you who don't know Brett, and come on, if you live in Austin, you at least know the name. You've probably met him. You've heard of him. He has founded 6 companies. The latest one just was sold to ServiceNow. He is an Austin native, and for somebody of his senior, almost senior age, there's not a lot of natives around who are working in the tech community at the highest levels, but he was born here. He started programming at age 7, which means he was actually kind of in the right place at the right time as tech was really taking off. And he was able to have some of the most amazing companies here in town, a couple of exits that still get quoted as some of the better exits ever in the history of Austin. So he is a true serial entrepreneur. And now he has decided he's going to dedicate the next 10 years of his life to helping humanity make it to the age of abundance for all. And we're going to talk about a lot about what that means. But Brett has been married to his sweetheart, his wife of 29 years, Deborah. They have 2 kids, age 16 and 20. And I follow him on social media. His kids are pretty impressive. So, Brett, let's jump into this. You just sold your company. Data.World was one of those companies we were all talking about. And poof, ServiceNow came in and said, we want your company. What caused you to sell? Why now? Why that all go on this year?
Well, so ServiceNow approached us at the right time, and they have $10 billion in cash on the balance sheet.
Is that all?
They have a very aggressive CEO, Bill McDermott, which is super dedicated to enterprise AI. He views the race for enterprise AI as existential for their company. And he talked about that in The Information, which is a publication that I subscribe to. It's a good one. And how important it is that they make it to this incredible impact for all of their customers. And they looked at Data.World as being very unique in our category of data cataloging, data governance, and data operations with the knowledge graph foundation we had, which you and I have discussed that before in a past episode, but essentially it takes in data and maps it across all the silos that big companies have, or big government agencies or big nonprofits, universities as well. I mean, we had customers in all verticals, and 3-dimensionalizes the data in a format that is ideal for AI. And we have 82 patents. Now those patents are owned by ServiceNow. And they ultimately looked at it as a way to greatly accelerate their chase to become a key player in enterprise AI. And it's a great home. I mean, it's a company which is named in the top 10 places to work on the Fortune Tech list. It was the fastest company outside of Salesforce.com to make it to 10 billion of ARR. Now it's the 3rd fastest because OpenAI made it to 10 billion of ARR. 2.5 years since the launch of ChatGPT. It is now at 12 billion of ARR, wow. Which is incredible. We'll get into the whole AI race. I mean, if you want to be really fair, you would say that OpenAI started 10 years ago as a nonprofit and now is at 12 billion of AR, but whatever. I mean, that's still an incredible pace.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so it's, people are really happy there, and it's an incredible place to work. And the resources now for Data.World are much more massive than they were as an independent company of, around 115 people.
So it's interesting because I remember when you started Data.World, and I've known you for over 20 years, so I've watched a lot of the successes that you've had along the way. Did you know, because we were talking a lot about data, when you first launched it, the term AI wasn't being thrown around as wildly as it has been for the last 2.5 years. Obviously, ChatGPT's release changed sort of everything for the average person. And I'll consider myself like an average guy, right? I'm an early enough adopter, but I'm not like a technologist. I'm not like you. I wasn't programming at age 7. When you were originally talking about the power of data, and I can remember when you started it, I saw you speak at an ACG event and some other things, talking about the power of data. Did you always see the connection of data to AI and how the two things would collide in the last couple of years with such power, or was that a surprise?
It was a surprise that the AI moment hit while we were running the company. It was not a surprise that we'd be well suited for it. As a matter of fact, if you go back in time to when we founded the company, my co-founders, Brian Jacob, Matt Lessig, and John Loynes, Brian had the vision before we even incorporated that the knowledge graph would be the ideal format for AI to operate on top of. And when he showed me why that was from a technical perspective, I understood it. And I knew that if that happened during the life of the company, it would be a foundational moment for us. And it's very lucky that it happened. We were working overtime and then some when ChatGPT launched. Actually, we were working with early versions of OpenAI's GPTs before ChatGPT launched with their APIs. And then when the firing, gun went off on November 30th of 2022, This is less than 1,000 days ago from today.
And about 3 weeks before I interviewed you the first time on this show, actually, I hadn't thought about that, but that would be if you were December 20th, then it was just weeks before that we interviewed. So that was all brand new when I talked to you last on this podcast.
That's right. And we were already like working our butts off to, because we knew that it would be a real moment. It was pretty shocking that it was the fastest company to hit 100 million users. That happened by February of 2023. And then, March of 2023, 4 months after the launch of ChatGPT, that's when they launched GPT-4. And that's when the moratorium call came where everybody was like, shut it down, right? Elon Musk was like, shut it down. 37,000 people signed that moratorium letter. And oh my gosh, Tom, we're so far beyond the moratorium letter moment of March of 2023. I mean, the models now in open source are so much more powerful than GPT-4. It's not even funny.
So it's interesting. I called myself not an early adopter, but I remember it was December 4th, 22, when my friend Ford Sakes said to me, Tom, you work around technology. You know a little bit about that. Are you familiar with this? And I said, no. And he said, sit down. And he opened up his computer. We were at a conference. And he opened up his computer and he showed me everything about ChatGPT, and I started playing with it that day. And I hadn't really thought of it that was only like 6 days after it launched. I hadn't ever put that together till we were having this conversation. I'm like, hey, for once I was an early adopter.
Yeah, you were. Yep, you were.
So congratulations on the sale. Congratulations to Data.World to becoming part of ServiceNow. They're a fantastic company. I actually 20 years ago spoke at their users conference. And so I know a lot of people in that world, or at least I did back then. But I want to jump to what you're doing now, because that's what everybody in Austin is. It's like, okay, what's Brett's new thing? And your new thing is a holding company called Love Conquers Fear. Tell us what that is, and we'll lead into all the things you're going to do with it.
Sure. Yeah. So I was a rare bird among the owls at Data.World. The owl was always our mascot, and that I did not go to ServiceNow, even though I have amazing respect for the company. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I mean, they're 30,000 people strong. They're a phenomenal company on a great trajectory from everything I could see. I decided I want to continue down the path of being an entrepreneur, and that I had a soul level calling that had to be acted on, that acted on with a level of urgency and love, not fear, like fear is paralyzing, but love, which opens you, with great urgency, because I really believe that humanity has 10 to 15 years to ultimately make it to what I'm calling the age of abundance for all, or destroy ourselves. And just to set everybody's mind at ease.
That's exciting.
Yes. So just to set everybody's mind at ease, I'm 95% certain that we make it. I will tell you that I'm one of the more optimistic people on that. There are some people that are really astute at AI that are in very powerful positions, which are like, give it a 50-50 shot. But I'm much more positive than them for several reasons. Like, one is, we made it with nuclear weapons. We could have destroyed ourselves then. And certainly we got close with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We made it with smallpox. That could have been all over. And there was a point in time, you can go look this up in the genealogical records, where humanity was down to 800 to several thousand people during the Ice Age, where there was a super volcano that was a near extinction event for us. And instead of us, having this evil nature, which I believe the core nature of humanity is good and loving, if we had an evil nature, we would have just destroyed ourselves, and that would have been it. End of the human experiment would have happened 50 to 70,000 years ago. Instead, we manifested love and made it together through collaboration. And so our core nature is to do that. It's hard to see that at times, because right now we're in a very fear-based scarcity, zero-sum mindset, where we're like, if China gets AGI before us, they're going to subjugate us. If we get it before them, we're going to subjugate them. So back to, what is Love Conquers Fear? It's four things. It's a holding company, which is, number one, the podcast called Love Conquers Fear that I've been recording and will launch in mid-September. And I'll probably be on a pace of 1 to 2 episodes a week once that launches, because I'll have a lot in the bag and therefore a buffer to keep it regularly flowing. And I'm having fantastic guests on, and everything from spiritual teachers to entrepreneurs to investors to scientists. It's a really wide range. Number two is, it's a book I'm writing, which is called Love Conquers Fear, with the subtitle Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. Number three is Focusing Hurt Family Investments, which we've been doing for around 16 years now. And by we, I mean me and my wife, Deborah. It's our family office. We're already in 147 startups and 47 VC funds. And we're fortunate enough to be the seed backer in what are now 12 unicorns, which is kind of incredible. And we're investing out of this thesis, where it's what companies, what funds are going to most help us make it to this age of abundance for all. We just invested yesterday in a new climate tech fund. This is now the time for climate tech, both because of the global calamities that are occurring in this area and because AI is going to dramatically accelerate material science and all of the things we need to solve climate change. And then number four is, what capitalistic action am I going to have as an entrepreneur to manifest to my best ability this age of abundance for all, in a couple of companies that I'll start next year. My current thinking is I'll probably start those as chairman and have great CEOs from the beginning, but TBD on that. I've got lots of time, and there's no clock for me personally. From a financial perspective, I'm lucky enough to have made enough money at age 40 where I never had to work again. So it's really what does my soul tell me is the right way to point that arrow to help. And I want to be clear, like really up front here, that I'm not looking at myself as some kind of world savior. Like, there's a lot of people bringing a lot of energy to this that have really good hearts. Mustafa Suleyman, Demis Hassibis, Eric Schmidt, Reid Hoffman, Dr. Fifi Lee, Mira Murati. I mean, I could go on and on. Henry Kissinger's dying work was the book Genesis, which he co-wrote with Eric Schmidt and Craig Mundy. And the last chapter of that book was Henry Kissinger's swan song to humanity before he died, on his plea for us to make it as humanity. And one way I'm looking at this period is it's God's final exam for humanity. It really is. What are we going to do? With great power comes great responsibility. What are we going to do as human beings with the most powerful technology we've ever had, and an exponential curve, which is very hard to even grok and think exponentially? What are we going to do with that type of power? Are we going to use it to create a world of death and destruction and subjugation? Or are we going to use it to, really reach for the golden, halo, if you will, and create a world of abundance and prosperity and love that we can't hardly imagine right now, but is within us and is our core nature?
So it's interesting. God's final exam. You wrote a short story just a couple days ago. I saw it posted. I saw it posted online. I'll be honest, I haven't read it yet, but I did make a little point to go back and read it because I thought, Brett's writing a short story on this. What was the short story, God's Final Exam? Give us the short version.
Yeah, so it's about this character I made, Dr. Alexander Bliss, and he is a quantum physicist who's a very published researcher who ultimately comes up with the means to help humanity transcend into that age of abundance for all. And I don't want to give away the whole short story. It is just a short story. It's just going to take 10 minutes for anybody to read.
And it's on his LinkedIn. There's a link to it. You can find it right there. So.
Or my Substack or my Medium or Twitter or Facebook.
So here's the thing. All this is pretty esoterically spiritual, and I've known you for a long time, so none of this really probably surprises me. But a lot of people just know Brett Hurt. He is 6-time entrepreneur, major exits, just sold a company to ServiceNow. Boy, he's so wealthy. Look at his house. I've seen pictures of him out by his pool. He's kind of a tech bro. I don't want to throw the word elitist in there, but somebody might say that. What are people shocked about this when you talk about the age of abundance for all and sort of this spiritual piece? What is the reaction that you get from people?
Well, so definitely when people think I use the word abundance, they think I'm using it for tech elites, and I'm not. Ultimately, I truly love all of humanity. I really mean that from the bottom of my soul and my heart. We all are divine at our core. We have lots of programming that we need to overcome, and some people have more programming than others. There are terrorists that are raised from the time they're born to hate and destroy, and that's really sad. And the level of deprogramming that a terrorist has to overcome is massive compared to the programming that you or me have to overcome, which is all the dystopia being pushed to us 24/7 by the media and by social media. In a world of 8.2 billion people, every day there's going to be a murder, something horrible happening. But I really believe in a world of 8.2 billion people, the vast majority of what's happening every day is acts of love and kindness and connection and beauty. And, you could choose to tune into that, or you could choose to tune into nonstop dystopia or doom scrolling, as they call it. What I mean by all really crystallized for me on a recent Uber ride. It was actually on the way to the same event that you and I spoke at in April, which was held at MIT, with, hold on, let me just put down our doggy here, which was held with 50 CEOs, right, that invited us in to give that talk. And that talk at MIT was super fun, and we can get into that. But the drive on the way to the airport was really, really electric for me. I met this wonderful guy, just an amazing guy. His name is Kalabu. And Kalabu is from this country called Chad. And Chad is a country that, just to be honest with you, I don't know, Tom, if you know much about Chad, but I didn't know anything about Chad. I just knew it was in Africa. That's all I knew is in the African continent. And so I'm using ChatGPT while I'm talking with Kalabu about Chad. And I find out it has a GDP of $660 a person. I found out it's almost at the very bottom of the Human Development Index. And this guy is like so electric, so beautiful, like so engaging. And he's sending almost all of his money that he's making from Uber back to his homeland for his wife and children, his parents. And he's like, look, I love America. This is the land of abundance. I mean, think about his perspective, right? Our GDP is around $85,000 per person. His GDP is $660 per person. And he's like, I'm saving up. And in 6 to 7 years, I want my wife and kids to move here so that they can experience this abundance with me. And as I was talking with him, I was thinking about, well, what's the solution going to be for a country like Chad? Because if we can solve that, like if we can bring abundance for all to a country like Chad, we can bring abundance anywhere. Start with the biggest problems first. And it crystallized for me on that Uber drive from my home to the airport, where I was like, it's going to be this acceleration between AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain to computer interfaces that allows us to create that for Chad. It's going to be an NGO 10 years from now who goes in with $10 million and an army of robots, and we'll have such a deflationary event at that point, in terms of not deflationary maybe in the overall economy, but deflationary in the sense of what does it cost to deploy thousands of robots in a country like Chad to go and build the solar energy projects they need, the clean water pathways they need, all of the homes having, electricity, the vaccine inoculations, the healthcare robots to take care of people, the cleft palate, right, which needs to be solved through surgeries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, that could be in 10 years, that literally to help a country like Chad could be, $10, $20 million. That's what abundance looks like. And if you can create an oasis in Chad, you can create an oasis anywhere in the world. And, look, all economics do start in developed countries first. And so that means the U.S. will have a level of abundance we can't even imagine. But there will be people, just like Bill Gates is like trying to solve malaria in the world, and we're almost there. There will be people that decide to leverage all these beautiful technologies that we're creating, the most powerful technologies in human history, to help the poorest countries among us create their own oases. And that is what I mean by abundance for all. I really mean for all. I mean for all of humanity to reach that period that has been prophesied in ancient scripture of all world religions, which is eventually heaven and earth would merge. And I think it's this lifetime where we're going to see the merger of heaven and earth. You could look at that as mystical. You could look at it as metaphorical. But the metaphorical aspect of that is, can you imagine a world where that guy, Kalabu, his family doesn't need to leave Chad because it's that much of an oasis? That would be a beautiful world.
So we talked a little bit about this when we were in Boston after you'd flown out and you're super passionate about it. And this is coming from a place of heart. I know that because I sat and talked with you about this for a little while. But I want to go back to the other part of my question. Do you get any pushback from people who are like, has Brett become woo-woo?
Yeah, I don't care about the pushback at all. It doesn't bother me at all. They can call me woo-woo or anything else. I mean, remember, you're talking to a guy who has been programming since he was 7, and I was picked on a lot growing up in Texas because that was weird starting in 1979. And frankly, within earshot of me, I could hear people telling my mother that she was quote unquote ruining me because all I knew how to do was work on that computer. So, I don't worry about what the naysayers say. What I will say is a source of pushback I get, which is maybe not intuitive, is not one I would actually have expected, is what are we going to do on earth if we have all that abundance? Like, does that just mean we're all going to be monks and meditating? And what I tell them is they're not thinking big enough. And I tell them, look, there will be people on earth that define their countries like Bhutan does, like gross domestic happiness, as opposed to GDP. That will happen. But I said there will also be people who want a Star Trek future, who say, now that we've transcended fear and we've allowed love to conquer it, let's go and populate other planets. Like, let's go. I mean, Tom, I don't know if you feel this. I've got a adventurous spirit. I'm assuming you do too. Like, I would love to go see a quasar. I'd love to get close to a black hole. I don't want to get sucked in it, but I'd like to see what does that look like? I mean, that would be incredible because the way I look at it, with this being, again, God's final exam for humanity, what is our choice? We have free will. Are we going to leverage these technologies, again, to create this world of abundance for all? Is that if we make the choice to do that, and I'm 95% certain we will, then we get access to literally things that are seen as not possible today, like faster than light speed travel. I think that we will figure that out. Once we get to AGI, we'll get to quickly artificial superintelligence, and then we'll quickly get to godlike intelligence. And at that point, we are only limited by the laws of physics. And by the way, we really don't even know what the laws of physics are today. We have postulates that are unproven. And we don't even know what 96% of the universe is made of. We call it dark energy and dark matter. We have no idea. We only know what 4% of the universe is made of today.
Well, and you talk about, physics and quantum physics. I mean, even Einstein said part of this is spooky, right? I mean, even he was like, that's kind of scary what it is. So,
he called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance because it broke the speed of light, where two particles became entangled and moved in synchronicity. And he did not have the scientific instruments in his lifetime to ultimately prove his mathematical theory on it. But we do have those scientific instruments shortly after he passed away, and we proved it over and over again. We know it's real. Quantum computing doesn't work unless quantum entanglement is real. Right. And we know it's real.
So a couple things from what you just said back there I want to touch on. One is you talked about people going to your mother going, I think you're ruining him, letting him play with computers all the time. I don't think you were ruined. I think that it worked out great. And I will bring this up again because I want to talk about this speech at MIT. And you talked about the fact that your parents did a really good job of letting Brett be Brett. Those are my words, but I think that was the best thing when I was raising kids. It was let Jackie be Jackie, let Kate be Kate. Sure. At the end of the day, I think that I don't think your mother had anything to worry about there. The other thing is you brought up Bhutan and sort of the happiness index. I'm going to Bhutan in 8 weeks. And so,
oh, good. I've never been. Deborah's been. I want to go.
I'm really excited because I just love the idea of everything I've read about the country and how beautiful it is and how kind the people are, how happy people are. I'm going with my daughter and my son-in-law, just the three of us. And so I'm really excited to have this experience. I'll report back on that. So I want to move on to this speech that happened to 50 entrepreneurs at MIT. You and I were both speakers at the same event. You left before the end. I spoke on the last day, but I got to see all the speakers. There were about 15 speakers over the course of 3 days, and it covered everything from a shaman to, you talking about AI and data and quantum and this whole world of abundance. We had people talking about, hereditary, about music, about everything else. It was a really interesting event. But as I said, I've known you for a long time and I've seen you speak on a lot of different topics. You're certainly a really smart guy. That was the best presentation I've ever seen you give. And I think part of it wasn't just data. This was coming from your heart.
Yes.
when you look at that speech, and you said it was kind of the first time you'd ever really done it on that level to that many people, maybe you'd done little pieces of it before. What was it like to create that speech? And we don't have a lot of time left, but what was the message of that talk? Because I was blown away.
Yeah, I mean, that was a profound moment. I mean, so coming into that conference, I had the book, The Celestine Prophecy, ringing in my ears, and I was like, what am I going to discover here? Who is going to appear? Who's going to show up? What's going to happen? And had this childlike curiosity about that. And if you read that book, The Celestine Prophecy, you will be able to see the synchronicities in your life. You could call them signs from the universe. You could call them signs from God. You could call them signs from your soul. But there are signs, and they're constantly happening around you. And there were a lot of synchronicities which happened for me at that event. And
I do have a picture of you in a unicorn costume. So I'll hold that over your head later.
Right. Yeah. Hey, you can totally hold that over my head. That was so much fun. Silent disco, right? We were both silent discoing. That was a blast. I told Randy Cohen, who is the one that invited me, and is the CEO and founder of Ticket City, and someone who is a longtime customer of mine in past companies, and Bizarre Voice and Core Metrics. When he asked me, he said, look, I want you to speak on something you're passionate about. And so I said, well, I'm really passionate about the hard problem of consciousness and the accelerating age of AI, quantum computing, robotics, and brain-to-computer interfaces. And he said, great. That sounds really wild. I said, yeah, it is. But it's super exciting. And so, so what I talked about in that speech are several things. So one is, we do not know what consciousness is. If you really dive into consciousness research, you will find lots and lots of scientists disagreeing with each other. And this is based on the problem of consciousness and solving what is consciousness is called actually the hard problem of consciousness. It's a scientist named David Chalmers that wrote a famous paper on it. And the part of consciousness that does not make sense is that the Big Bang, we theorized, happened 13.8 billion years ago. And the materialist will say, and I'm talking about materialist in that they think there's nothing special about us at all. We have no soul. There is no God. We're just on a random rock in a vast, universe, and nothing really matters. It's all meaning that we ascribe, and that's the materialist view, and that's what we are taught in school, and that is taught all over the world, over and over and over again. And so the materialist paradigm says, look, 13.8 billion years ago, there was the Big Bang. There were lots of random collisions which had no meaning that eventually led to chemistry. More collisions led to, simple life, being born in the ocean. And then that simple life eventually crawled out of the ocean, turned into complex life. And, some of the complex life stayed in the ocean, like whales, et cetera. And then in that complex life, for whatever reason, consciousness or self-awareness, sentience, popped out. And we don't understand why. We don't know why the universe would evolve in that way. It doesn't make any sense, really. Like, what function does self-awareness, have? Like, and by self-awareness, I mean that deep, feeling of oneness, of, the fact that I am both an I, and I am also a me. That there's two breadths, right? There's the soul, and then there's the physical reality that I am in. And the soul is eternal. And all of the spiritual teachings talk about the soul as eternal. And you can feel it, and that soul, and inside you're having an experience where you experience all types of like deeply complex, thoughts, about about how you're evolving, about how you're working with other people. Like you're not a robot, you have free will. And so we don't really understand that. And there's this race underway to create sentience, right? And there's a lot of fear of creating sentience where people, graft like in their mind the Terminator scenario or the Matrix or.
I mean, I grew up on the original Battlestar Galactica, right? The sentience, they were there to serve and get rid of imperfections, and they decided humans were imperfections and they destroyed all of humanity.
Right. Yeah. So these tales are, I also grew up on Battlestar Galactica as well as, Star Wars, Star Trek, and you name it. And these tales are as old as time. I'm Jewish. There's also the tale of Gollum, where the rabbi hundreds of years ago in Prague created this stone golem, animated it, became sentient, destroyed the synagogue. So this has been grafted in our psyche for a long time. And now there's this race underway to create what's known as AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And this race is so pronounced that we're spending more money than is even fathomable to contemplate. I mean, we're talking about for Stargate, which President Trump announced on February 21st, $500 billion of funding was announced alongside Mayoshi Son, Sam Altman, and Larry Ellison, which is more money inflation adjusted than we spent on the Manhattan Project versus the Nazis to win World War II, or the space race versus the Russians to win control of space. And then shortly after, you may remember President Trump did that deal in the UAE. That was after you and I were at MIT for $4.5 trillion. Okay. Like making 500 billion look like chump change. So humanity has never prioritized anything with as much money and time and urgency. And it is rooted in fear. Make no mistake about it. It is rooted in this place of like, if we don't create it before China, again, they're going to subjugate us. And so which is the first country that gets to AGI and then has breakout success and then it will rule the world? And so, we're approaching it with a lot of urgency. And then, as you know, in that talk at MIT, I took a strong turn into spirituality. Mm-hmm. And the reason I took that strong turn into spirituality is it's very authentic for me. And what I've experienced in terms of all the books I've read. I've been on a soul quest for about the past 8 months. I've read over 40 books. I just finished this week the Gita for the first time. I've quoted from the Gita, but I've never read the whole thing. It's a really divine piece of work, but I completely reject the caste system in the Gita. But there's a lot of man-made stuff in religion that I reject. But
all religions, you're going to find pieces that you got to reject.
There's all going to be pieces like that. But the Gita was the original exploration of the self, and it really is a divine piece of work. So I do believe that AI and quantum computing and robotics is going to take us into this exploration of what really makes us human. And I actually think what we're going to end up finding out is that we do have a soul, there is a heaven, that consciousness is fundamental, and that's going to lead us to a really beautiful, amazing place. And that's the mystical side of heaven and earth merging, right? The metaphorical side is the side of us living in this age of abundance that we can't even imagine. Personalized products and services beyond our wildest dreams, being able to explore the vast universe, which is, as far as we know, is infinite. So it's going to be an incredible time, but I'm not candy coating it in my book and on the podcast. There's going to be some really rocky, rough times. And one book that I read on this soul quest is The Alchemist. And one of the most famous lines in that book is, "It's always darkest before the dawn."
Yep. Well,
And
we could turn this into
we're gonna hit a place of darkness. Yeah.
we could turn this into a 4-hour podcast, but I know you have a hard stop coming up in about 7 minutes. So I want to pay attention to just a couple of things here. One is that talk was great. And I think you have it on your YouTube channel. If anybody wants to go and watch that, they can probably find it there. But the other thing is, I remember someone asked you a question about all of this and then the sentient level and this, and you had that 5% fear, 95% it's all going to be great. And somebody asked you why, and you had a great answer that's resonated with me now since April. And that was, you said, AI doesn't have a soul. Humans do.
Yes.
And that to me really kind of summed it up in a way with all this fear and all this race and all this stuff that's going on. At the end of the day, humans still have a soul. And I agree with you. It's usually good over bad. So I want to shift gears just before we leave on this thing, but I do really appreciate, I think you said at the beginning of this, that this whole thing has become a soul level calling for you. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast and talk about it. And it's probably good we have a hard stop in 6 more minutes, because we would have a 3-hour, we'd have a Joe Rogan level podcast, because there's so many things.
There's a lot of layers.
I mean, I want to talk about like Star Trek, and when they discover warp speed, the aliens come, and it's like, maybe it's not warp speed. Maybe it's this whole thing around quantum. And when we figure it out, the aliens come.
Right. There's also that great book and movie Contact, right? When they teach us how to do faster and light speed travel.
Right. So anyway, going back to wrapping this up, I always like to wrap up these podcasts by talking about our Austin tech ecosystem. You know, what it was 20 years ago isn't what it is today. So when you look at where we are now and where we're going, and we only have 5 minutes, so you got another call. What are your thoughts about Austin, where we're going, and what advice do you have for our tech community as a whole?
Yeah. So overall, we're on a good trajectory, and we're getting more diversified. So we're seeing a lot more hard tech come into being, really spurred on in part by, everything from Neuralink to SpaceX to Tesla. I mean, one of the things that's pretty stunning is Tesla now has 23,000 employees in Austin. Dell has around 11,000. It is now the largest private employer in Austin by far. And that's kind of incredible, right? That happened. But there's also lots of other companies. There's Icon doing 3D printed housing. There's Apptronic, which has the Apollo robot, which just announced a huge unicorn round. So there's a lot of hard tech coming online. There's a lot of CPG that's come online. Siete, which is a great brand. I mean, I love their taco seasoning and taco shells. It's for the gluten-free crowd, and was made out of a family that was really struggling with the diet of the Mexican food diet, and wanted to create a company around it. And they've had an incredible outcome, like generational wealth now in that family. So we've got CPG really thriving. We have the Dell Medical School coming online in a big way. They're now building a hospital. I actually just joined the advisory board of that because they get to do it right from the beginning. So I was talking with the dean, and she asked me to join that because it's like a startup, right? They get to build AI into the fabric of it, all the sensors into the fabric of it from the very beginning, which is really, really cool. So that was a great way to jump in. And there's going to be tons of health tech startups that come out of that. We're going to have a future personalized medicine, and I mean, just all types of things we can't even imagine on that front. So it's a really interesting time. I mean, what's holding Austin back? My biggest fear is all of the punching down that's occurring at the Texas state level on lots of people, from trans people to different immigrants, which really are very important to the Texas ecosystem. And, Texas, it's great that we're winning capitalistically, but that kind of punching down is not in the spirit of Texas. I was born and raised here, and I can tell you it's always been a live and let live state. It's always been a state which is about, individual liberty, and that's really being attacked. And it's even being attacked capitalistically. I'm an investor in a company which makes meat from the cells of the animal. It's called cellular agriculture. And Texas is trying to ban that because the farmers don't want a novel solution that has 1/10 the feed cost going into it as input, 1/10 the water cost, no hormones, no antibiotics, very little land use. Like the ranchers, broadly in Texas, look at that as a real fear. And that's holding capitalism back. So, Texas has its challenges, but overall is on a very good trajectory. And we're very proud to be here.
Well, Brett, I'm going to have to bring you back to talk about more of that stuff. I always promise people I will get them out on time so they can get to their next call. But Brett Hurt, thank you for being a guest here on Austin Tech Connect. And I look forward to crossing paths with you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. I'll tell you what, we do the show because we want to expose everyone in town to stories of what's going on with the real people. Because at the end of the day, tech and funding and all that stuff is great. But Austin is really a collection of stories of individuals and where they come from and what they're trying to do. And so that's why we do this show. So please tell all your friends and come back next week for a next interview. Thank you very much.